Welcome back to another episode of Kicking It with Coach Red, where we bring you all the news, stories, takes, and opinions about your favorite teams from the Pacific North, fresh from the good to the bad to the Mariners.
The
Offseason Mariners
off-season Mariners.
beat you to the punch. Not talking
Thank you.
about the offseason Mariners tonight. We're going to talk about the primetime Seahawks in their first outing under Mike McDonald in prime time. And I think as a whole, it was not the outcome that we had hoped for, but I think there are definite pieces of hope that you saw from this game. And we're going to break that down here right about now. But before we do that, why don't I tell you a little bit about us? If you're looking for a guy that is going to just be a prognosticator of hope, just going to make everyone believe in the Seahawks. See, believe, and we believe. And if you're looking for someone to follow on that journey, it's me, your boy, Coach Red. You can find me on X at the real Coach Red, on Instagram at the real underscore Coach Red, TikTok at the real Coach Red. Also, find the show over on YouTube. Search Kicking It with Coach Red. Like, subscribe, hit the bell notifications, leave a comment or two. And if you're looking for a guy that will also try to lead you astray in your fandom, he's loud and he's proud and he gets fired up for opening drive first downs on the first play of the game. If you're looking for someone like that, you're looking for a man like Cain.
That's right. That's right. I'm Kane. You can find me over on Twitter at Kane2406. TikTok, Kane0624. Also follow the show's socials over on Twitter and Instagram at Coach Red Pod. False. Do it. Freaking do it.
In Mike McDonald's prime time premiere, the Seahawks fall 42-29 in this game. And break it down a little bit. In the first quarter, Detroit scores 7. In the second quarter, Seahawks score 7. Detroit scores 14. In the third quarter, Seahawks score 13. Detroit 14. And in the fourth, Seahawks score 9. Detroit scores 7. Now, how did all that happen? Well, I'm glad you asked because I'm going to tell you. First quarter, you had a 1-yard run by David Montgomery for the touchdown. Second quarter, Jahmyr Gibbs, 3-yard touchdown run. Kenneth Walker, 1-yard touchdown run. And Jahmyr Gibbs, a 1-yard touchdown run. You also had Jason Myers missed field goal, 62-yarder. Just came up a little bit short. The third, sorry about that. Third quarter, you have Geno Smith to AJ Barner for a 9-yard connection. Then, probably the stat that you weren't ready to hear, a pass from Amon-Ra St. Brown to Jared Goff for 7 yards and a touchdown. Kenneth Walker, 1-yard touchdown, 2-point conversion failed. A 70-yard completion from Goff to Williams. Fourth quarter rolls around, 21-yard touchdown run from Kenneth Walker. You have Jared Goff to Amon-Ra St. Brown. We're just going to flip it almost the same yardage. This one was 8 yards. So Goff has got one extra yard in that arm compared to Amon-Ra St. Brown. And then Jared Goff gets sacked for a safety by Draymond Jones. And that concludes the scoring. When you look at this game as a whole, at least for me, until the Seahawks had to punt the ball and ended up getting the sack, they converted on fourth down. Passing interference was called on Tyler Lockett, which was a valid call. Up until that point, I thought the Seahawks could still win the game. And it was really, even after they got the sack and drove down, Geno Smith puts a ball in harm's way. DB makes a fantastic play. Joseph in the end zone.
Dude, from the looks of it, though, like, I know that they did rule it an interception. From the way the replay is, it does look like it gets jostled a little bit in there.
But
Doesn't
the ball,
maintain
it
full
did get jostled, but it never touched the ground.
Okay.
So, um, let's break down some Seahawks stats for you. Geno Smith, 38 of 56, both career highs for 395 yards, career high, one touchdown, one interception. And the thing that I noticed, and it was talked about on the broadcast, is the Seahawks going into the second half had 4 rushing plays, and one of them was a run by Geno Smith. So
And it was most of your yards. They had 18 yards going into halftime, and Geno Smith was 10 of them.
12. And we'll get to the rushing stats, but that's why you saw the elevated numbers from Geno, because there were a boatload of passes.
I mean,
You,
they had to get back into it.
yep. In the second half, you sit there and they start carrying the ball a little bit more, but rushing stats: Kenneth Walker, 12 carries, 80 yards, 3 touchdowns. Geno Smith, 5 carries for 38 yards. And Zach Charbonnet, 2 carries for 15 yards. And yes, the Lions are a tough team to run against. And you looked at their secondary without Brian Branch. You have Terrion Arnold that was had a sickness as well. You Carlton Davis, who was getting pretty handsy, but you still got to run the ball. And you saw when the Seahawks started incorporating the run is really when their offense took off in the second
Yep.
half, right? So, but you go to these receiving stats, and there's so many guys. I had to keep some guys off. There were some guys I wanted to put on here, but I didn't have enough room to write all my stats. So DK Metcalf, 7 receptions for 104 yards. Tyler Lockett, 5 receptions for 61. JSN, 8 receptions for 51. Sharbs had 5 receptions for 39. Kenneth Walker had 4 receptions for 38. And AJ Barner had 2 receptions for 27 yards and a tutty. DK Metcalf also fighting for yards, which you love to see. He took on 7 guys, and right before his knee hits the ground, gets popped by Jack Campbell, and the ball comes loose. That was kind of a big blow, especially in the first half, that really
Right.
changed the tide. They go down and score, but the Seahawks come back and answer right away.
Yep.
So a lot of back and forth, even though the score doesn't look like it was overly close. I think it was a lot closer than the scoreboard says. And when we'll talk about the Lions offense a little bit here after we talk about the Seahawks defense,
It was
because
horrible
that
for the
was
most part.
let's talk about some defensive stats. Usually I have about 5 or 6 guys that we talk about, and I've got 2 guys and then 3 that are coupled into one. Uh, your linebackers, I thought, had a pretty solid game in this
Reese
one. You
Knight.
had Terrell Dotson had 10 tackles. I believe 5 of those were solos. You had Tyrese Knight starting in place of Jerome Baker for back-to-back weeks, 9 tackles. I believe 4 of those were solos. And then he had 3 sacks on the day, one by Draymond Jones that resulted in a safety. You had one by Jaron Reed and one by Derek Hall. When you look at this game as a whole, the ball did not touch the ground for the
One time.
Lions offense. There
One
were
time.
some penalties that negated incompletions. Jared Goff was 18 for 18. Amon-Ra St. Brown was 1 for 1. No fumbles. Their rushing attack was solid. But I'm going to throw a caveat to this. The Seahawks defense did not play great.
Ooh.
You lost Julian Love in the third quarter due to injury. You went into this game with 4 of your top 5 defensive linemen / edge players not participating in this game. Boye Mafe has had a sack each week. It has looked electric. Chiney Nwosu, you were hoping this was the game that he was going to get on the field, because then it really brings into question, should they have just put him on the pup list, on the early IR? He would have been out 4 weeks, and you could have filled that roster spot with somebody else.
Mhm.
You didn't have Leonard Williams, who has been all worldly at getting pressures and being a disruptive force in the backfield. And then rookie Byron Murphy also not being on the field. I think if you play this game again with those guys healthy, I think that you have a lot different outcome. I think that they're
Closer game for
it's a
sure.
lot closer, and Jared Goff's not going to have the night he had. Right? You had
Mhm.
you had guys that were getting play time. You had a couple of guys brought up from the practice squad. You saw Tyus Bowser on the field. You saw Travis Gibson. You saw Drake Thomas, Miles Adams.
Mhm.
Again, those are guys that weren't getting. They were some of them were getting some run earlier in the year, but they weren't getting the run like they were getting in this game against your toughest opponent. And you knew that, that part was going to be tough. I think that the Lions defense is still growing,
Mhm.
but they have good pieces and
I mean, it has, well, when both of your corners combined for about 7 or 8 PIs in one night.
should have been more. But the one thing is Gino, I think, was pressured 8 or 9 times. He was sacked 3 times. And when you really look at it, with the amount of dropbacks he had, he was getting the ball out quick. He was being decisive. I think he had the interception. I think he had
And
two
that's
other
still not
throws that
gonna
I
count
think
the
were,
interception because
yeah,
it's a
there were,
garbage time. It's trying, it's end of the game,
yeah, I'll give him that.
basically.
I'd say earlier in the game, he had two other passes that I think were ill advised. But as a
Yep.
whole, you were sitting there feeling pretty good about the offense.
Yeah.
I felt actually pretty darn good about the offensive line as a whole comparative to weeks past.
Stone Forsythe has been very decent at playing right tackle.
Yeah, I saw Christian Haynes just
Pancake a dude.
pancake Aiden Hutchinson, and then decided to keep him on the ground, which was a fun sight to see. Lakin Tomlinson and in run blocking, great. Lakin Tomlinson and pass blocking, not a fan right now. So
No.
you have some of those things that you're looking to clean up, but I think that as a whole, you saw Gino take that step forward. He commanded the offense, and you just see what a difference maker this team is when with Ryan Grubb being able to get creative to get
Yes.
his playmakers the ball. Your top three playmakers accounted for 20 receptions out of the 38. And when you combine them all together, they're over 200 yards of your 395. That's what you want to do. Those are your guys that are going to be making the plays. So you want to get them the ball in space, and I think they did a
There,
very good job of that.
yes, there's one thing I do want JSN on more mid routes type deal because I think that's where he's best at is that mid level and then beyond, right, to get those rack yards.
Mhm.
Um I love that he got 8 receptions, right? But for 55 yards, I feel like that needs to be stretched out a little bit. I know DK's your big play guy, go down the field. Tyler Lockett's your turn and just possess and catch, right? And go
Mhm.
down with it. I want JSN to be that guy that does a little zig, breaks a guy, and gets tossed the ball. I mean, he's got a great route running tree with him, and I just want JSN to get more yardage and stuff because that's going to break this offense open even more. Kenneth Walker's doing it every sorts of way, right? When he ran that first touchdown in, um,
I
and
texted you because
Pharaoh
there
and
was
Pharaoh
there
Brown got
destroyed,
thrown into it, and he just bounces off and goes straight into the end zone. Was
and
fantastic.
if Sharp gets that carry, I don't think he makes it because I don't
No.
think he bounces out as electric and can get that corner. I think he's either going straight ahead or then trying to break off that short edge and get stopped short. So
Yeah.
um it's a good thing the Seahawks didn't listen to you and make sure that Kenneth Walker was 1000%
Hey,
for the 49ers game in 2 weeks, but it looked
fair
pretty
enough.
solid to me.
Yeah, he was amazing, dude. He was amazing.
Well,
But
technically, it's like a week and 2 days now because that's a Thursday nighter. But
I also
I
think
digress.
in year two, you need to be getting more yardage out of Jackson Smith and Jigba, and maybe a little less safety blanket with Tyler Lockett. Start getting. I know Tyler Lockett is old, good old reliable, and I'm always going to cheer for it. But I want the young guy to start getting his due.
I
I think
mean,
he's a really talented player, and I think he's going to be very good for this team.
you're his production through 4 games is higher than his production was all last year, and
I
it's
know.
continued to grow. And
I know.
Gino has a good relationship, I think, with all three of them, and you can see the connection he has. All three of them have bailed him out, and when he's put balls in tough to catch places, each
Yes.
each and every one of them have made those plays this year. So it's interesting to see how this will unfold. But the one thing that was maybe the craziest out of this whole thing is Joe Buck and Troy Aikman actually showed respect for the Seahawks on the broadcast multiple times, even though the
Yes.
Seahawks were not there. It was pretty evident by anyone that follows the Seahawks.
I just didn't think they liked Pete Carroll. That's
Mm.
just I don't know, man.
Well, the Seahawks a lot of time under Pete Carroll played hero ball. Keep it tight. Maybe not the most exciting game, and then it's super exciting at the end for better or for worse. But I think
Right.
that you're starting to see I want to see a little bit more balance in the next game, especially when we get there talking about the next matchup that we have versus the Giants. But when you can get this thing a little bit more 50-50, you look at UW last year, especially down the stretch, you still had Michael Penix balling out in some of those later games against um, Oregon State, against WSU, against USC. Sometimes you just got to rely on the run. And I think that Charbonnet's ability to be a third down back and block in the pocket and catch balls out of the backfield is great. I think that you see the explosiveness that you have with Kenneth Walker, and although they are similar stature, they are extremely different runners. I think that you do have a similar style to Jameer Gibbs and David Montgomery that was on the other side. Montgomery's a little
Yes.
bit more your bruiser, which is your Charbonnet, and K9 gives you that sizzle like you see with Jameer Gibbs. But I do think that K9 has a little bit more physicality being in year 3 than Jameer Gibbs
I mean,
has in year
how
2.
awesome was that run by Kenneth Walker where he got flipped by Anzalone, stayed up, got back up, and flipped again?
Yeah, it
That
was
was
great.
awesome.
Great body control. I think his oblique is just fine.
Yeah, I just one thing I do want to see
We're not there yet.
is
We're not there yet. We talk
okay.
about what we want to see after you tell us who your offensive player of the game is.
All right, it's Geno Smith this week. Yes, he only had one touchdown, but the dude damn near threw for 400 yards on the day, and he looked electric. He had a certain zip to his ball. Big shouts to Pharaoh Brown. Oh God, didn't realize that ball was coming that quick, but
He thought it was
that
going to somebody behind him. He put his hands down.
yeah. But Gino was clicking on all cylinders, it seemed like, until it was late in the game. Yes, he was getting the ball out quick. They played a lot of zone. You saw DK kind
Played
of
a lot of man.
it
They
was a
played a
lot of
lot of man.
it was a lot of zone man type of play.
It was a lot
And
of man.
when I love that they had Carlton Davis on DK all night. It was that I mean the
It
first
was a
drive
battle.
where
DK
Gino
Metcalf battles with people, man.
yeah, where Gino put that absolute dime to DK in the opening drive was awesome. I mean, it was just boom, 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 every single play. The dude had total command of the pocket, even though he was getting pressures, he was stepping up into places where he could get the ball out. I mean, Aiden Hutchinson, I believe, was held sackless on the night
Mm-hmm.
because Gino used his foot or his footwork and moved around in the pocket like he did year one, right? We're starting to see that the hype that Ryan Grubb gives his players, the confidence is oozing from Gino right now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not even, as I've said in prior weeks, all of his interceptions this year have been garbage, like time and getting
Or fluky.
fluky or getting sacked and he throws one out, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's about been all of his interceptions this year. He's been so smart with the ball. He's been putting it where it needs to be. Yes, sometimes it can get a little scary, but that's like that with almost every quarterback. Just
Yeah.
depends on the day. But Geno Smith, is a top 15 quarterback in this league. And I think
100%.
he's on probably the cusp of being a top 10. You give anybody a line and they can be pretty good, right? But
Mhm.
Gino has just excelled. Came out of this game, he wanted, he showed Ryan Grubb's open playbook. Really, I mean,
Mhm.
it was a great showing on offense for them.
Well, and you
So
can't discount what he did in the run game with his Lamborghinis and, you know, 5 carries for 38 yards. Some
right,
some of it was straight up scrambles, and the one design run got him 12 of those 38. So he's
so
doing it multiple ways.
400 combined yards on the day. So great to see. Want to see him do it more. Coach Red, who was your offensive player of the game?
Is Kenneth Walker. I don't know if you realize this, but he had 3 touchdowns.
Yeah,
And like
they
we
did.
stated, Sharp might not have gotten one of those touchdowns. And you see the power that he had on the second 1 yard run. And then you see the explosiveness that you saw on the 21 yard run, being able to get inside of a block, beat the guy to the corner, and really make plays happen. And
Big shouts
Ken,
to Jake Bobo.
I couldn't even get him in there. There's too many wide receivers to talk about. But Jake Bobo did have a great block on that play.
He sure
But
did.
Kenneth Walker is RB1.
Difference
He's
maker.
I
He's a
think that
difference
I
maker.
think that Kenneth Walker is top 10 running back when healthy in this league. By and he also clocked in with 4 catches for 36 yards. So on the day he's over 116 coming off of sitting out for 2 weeks.
Yep.
So I think that they were trying to ease it in a little bit. They knew that, especially with Aiden Hutchinson, you had to get the ball out quick and really attack these guys quick, and you didn't want to overload. They do have a stout run defense, but as they started to open up that playbook a little bit more and become a little bit more balanced in the second half, that's when you saw the Seahawks team start clicking. So I expect to see that going forward. And Kenneth Walker on the field is going to be a joy to see week in, week out. He gives
Yes.
you highlight reel material every week.
Difference maker.
All right, Kane, who's your defensive player of the week?
Derek Hall. Derek Hall. Derek Hall. Dude.
Who?
The the growth of Derek Hall this season is on full display. Oh boy. It seemed like he was the only one getting through, getting pressures, getting in Goff's face most of the night till the tail end. I mean, Jaron Reed started it off, I believe, on the first drive
Yep.
with a sack, and then Draymond Jones got it in the
Late.
fourth on the safety. But it just seemed like Derek Hall was all over the place that game. He was battling Penei Sewell. It was great to see. The dude was flying off the edge. And not to mention how strong he is, getting shoved out of the way from Penei Sewell. And all of us learning about a new rule in football: if a quarterback's in the pocket, no horse collars are being called. That's pretty neat. So he got a sack on that while getting thrown by a tackle. It was super cool to see. I just think that this dude has been a breath of fresh air with Uchenna Nwosu being out. I believe he's sitting at 4 sacks now on the year because
Sounds
he
about
got,
right.
I believe he didn't get one in one of the games.
Week 2.
So he got one against the Broncos, got 2 last week. Now I got 1 this week. I just want him to keep going. I think his progression has been amazing this year.
Well, and his progression is similar to Boye Mafe. So I would say that coming out of college, Derek Hall was more polished overall as a pass rusher than Boye Mafe. Boye Mafe hadn't been playing football as long. And what you really saw a lot with Hall last year is the bend in his game, his ability to get around an edge. But sometimes that angle was a little too deep and he wasn't able to get those sacks. You're seeing a second year player because a lot of times rookies, you have to learn how to put on weight, keep on weight, stay effective. And a full offseason in an NFL regime has really benefited him. And I think that being around the likes of Leonard Williams, Boye Mafe, only a year ahead of you in a draft class, and Uchenna Nwosu. These are great guys to learn from. And I think that
Yep.
Jonathan Hankins brings that veteran presence as a run stuffer. Jaron Reed has been electric at times. I think this is a fun group to be around, but him taking that step forward is a lot like you saw Boye Mafe take in year two.
Yes.
When you add Mafe and Nwosu into this group, you throw Draymond Jones as your fourth rusher. You've got the pressure on the interior because you know that Murphy can get after the quarterback. You know that Leonard Williams can get after the quarterback. You know that Jaron Reed can get after the quarterback. This team is a completely different animal when they will all be on the field, which I'm hoping is sooner than later.
Yep.
And but like you said, Hull has shown up this year in ways that we didn't see last year. We caught glimpses of it, in his first preseason going up against the third stringers. We saw it this year in the preseason. I was hoping it would translate to the regular season. So far, it has.
Yep. Love it. Coach Red, who's your defensive player of the game?
Dude, give me Tyrell Dotson, dude.
Dude, he's such a baller.
Um on Jameer Gibbs's second touchdown run, Tyrell Dotson is in perfect position, meets him in the hole, and actually, it might have been the Montgomery one. And he's got to get skinny to get through the hole. He makes contact at about the 2 yard line, slides a little bit off, but still holds the foot. Fortunately, goes for a touchdown. But
That was Julian Love.
no, it was Dotson.
It was Julian Love. He's the
No,
one who missed the tackle, right? And
he didn't miss the tackle. I'm saying that
it
on
was
this one,
Jameer Gibbs too.
I'm saying he didn't miss. He was still wrapping him up, and he leaned over the end line. It was Dots, and there were other times where he just met the guy in the hole. And I'm like, his ability to diagnose and be in good position in pass defense is on full display. This is a
Mm-hmm.
guy that, as much as I hate Pro Football Focus, through the second half of the year when he got consistent playing time, I think he was the third overall rated linebacker by Pro Football Focus. And this is a guy that learned under Matt Milano at the linebacker position with Buffalo as an undrafted free agent. And him and Tyree Snyder are a fun little combo. Yes, I do love Baker. He's a little bit more physical, but Tyree Snyder can also wrap up with the best of them.
Twitchy, dude. He's so twitchy. I love it.
I
He's
want
so
Dotson. I
fast.
want Dotson to get an extension. I don't know why we only signed him to a 1 year deal. I think that you might have been looking at, yes, you had good production, but you don't have a ton of tape on this guy. It was primarily a special teams player going into last year. I think this is a guy that you look at extending right now to be a core of your young but emerging defense.
I would also like. I would love to have Jerome Baker back long term too. Like, granted, he's been out.
Jerome Baker's a little older. I'm
He's
gonna
tw-
hitch.
he's he's 25.
Jerome Baker is not 25. If Jerome Baker is 25,
27.
see. But the other thing is Jerome Baker's been hampered by injuries throughout his career. He's a little bit more banged up too. With Dotson, you've got a guy that can be on this team for a while to
They're
couple
also a
with
year apart.
Tyrese Knight.
That's true. I do love Tyrese Knight, dude. That dude flies around the field. But Terrell Dodson is a dog. He has gotten, I believe, 10 tackles every single game,
Real close to
or
it.
close. He has been the stuffer in the middle, and I am loving what I'm seeing from him.
Yeah, and I think that there was a play with Amon-Ra St. Brown where he got matched up with him. And Amon-Ra St. Brown is a great wide receiver in this league. There was a
Yep.
little bit of separation, but he was on him immediately. And to get a guy that's twitchy and can get separation in small spaces, for him to be that type as a linebacker covering one of the top wide receivers in the league, it's good to see. The guy's a
Yeah.
complete football player.
I mean, like, I don't think I've said this yet on the pod yet, but I'm not mad they lost. It was bound to happen at some point this season. The Lions are a very, very good football team, and it's just tough, dude. Like, Kind of sucks, but what can you do? Go to next week. That's really all you can do. It's early enough in the season. Us as fans, we kind of knew that this was the real true first true testament because it's the first team that you played with a very good roster, especially and actually have a quarterback. Um, they just came up short. Defense fell apart. Couldn't stop them. And like you said, if we had some other guys, maybe not the whole cast of characters, but maybe if you had a Leonard Williams this week, it's a little bit of a different game.
Um, yeah, and that's the thing too is when you look at this team in week 2, they went to the Patriots, who came off a big win week 1 against the Bengals. Bengals weren't at full strength, but that was a big win. They created a lot of turnovers, and it was a tie game, went into overtime, right? So you're still getting used to this team playing on the road.
Yep.
You come into this game missing a handful of impact players. You knew that this was going to be a tougher game to win. You were hoping the offense could put enough together to make it another one of those shootouts, which they were damn near close to doing it. You need more stops from the defense. Like we said, both rushers for Detroit, Gibbs and Montgomery, both had big days. You look at
Thank you for
Jared Goff.
not running in the third quarter.
Yeah, no ball touched the ground in play that
Yep.
was not negated by a penalty. So when you look at those aspects in a tough team,
Yep.
it's a game you wanted to win, but it's not a game that you absolutely had to have, right? You're not in desperation mode at this point. And probably one of the most glowing things that I've seen is going into through last week, ESPN had the Seahawks power ranked at number 4 as one of the undefeated teams. I looked at the power rankings today. They dropped to 6. So the
Not bad.
respect's on them. And you need so where I want to see improvements. The first one is you got to get healthier. You can't be missing, and it's going to be interesting to see what's happening with Julian Love as the week goes along.
Mm-hmm.
How close is Mafe, Leonard Williams, Chinny Nwosu, Byron Murphy to coming back and playing, right? When is George Fant going to be healthy enough to play? When is Abe Lucas going to be healthy enough to play, right?
Yep.
Those are big pieces that you expected to be a key part to this rebuild under Mike McDonald.
Mm-hmm.
That's the big thing that I say is you get this team a little bit healthier. They're going to be in games. They're a tough, resilient team, even though this has been the worst defensive effort that you've seen from a Mike McDonald team. There's a lot of factors that went into that. And I'm not trying to make excuses, right? There's a lot of guys where they did not make plays. There were a
I
lot of
mean,
times where they went for big hits.
let
There
me
was
let me let me throw one out there. Tariq Woolen, where was he all night? I
he was on the field.
He was getting blocked all night. That's what he was getting. That's all he did. Spoon, yeah, he tried to put a big hit on Montgomery, failed. But then the best thing about it, he got up and chased him down to the other side of the field.
Yep. Yeah. This team gets after it. And
Yeah.
they weren't making excuses after the game. And Mike McDonald, during his press tour today for local radio, he's like, we know we have to be better as play callers. And the guys know that they're being held accountable, right? This isn't, it's a tough loss, just check things. No, the guys know the mistakes they made. They're going to work on them and try to improve on them going forward. And he's a very succinct guy when he is speaking. I've read articles about his ability to show tough love. Like you didn't really see that from Pete, right? Pete was the epitome of a player's coach. But I think with McDonald, you're seeing the guys respect the hell out of him. I think
Yes,
that
they do.
when you look at some of the emergence of Hall and a little bit more of Mafe, Arden Durde's worked with Michael Parsons, who absolutely blew up last year. He was the edge, he was the D-line edge coach for the Cowboys. And then Ryan Grubb, the hype's real, man. This guy is a phenomenal offensive mind. So I think you get a little bit healthier. And it also helps that you kind of get a team that's not playing the best football coming into town. You're coming back home. It's a little bit of a shorter week with you playing on Monday, but you've got the New York Jets who are sitting at 1-2 right now on the year.
Giants.
Yeah, Giants
Do,
1-2. You
do
still
I
have
get in
Danny
it?
Nichols
All right.
slinging the ball. Malik Neighbors has been a
Really
breath
good.
of fresh air for this team, specifically because it's unlocked a little bit more of old Danny Nichols. Um, their defense, I think, is average.
Yep.
And I think the big key for them is their offensive line is playing better early on this year than they did last year. The Seahawks absolutely demolished their offensive line and knocked Daniel Jones out of this game in prime time last year.
Yep.
And I think that what you're seeing is they don't have Saquon Barkley anymore. You have it's Devin
Devin
Singletary,
Singletary.
who's doing okay.
Serviceable. He's
Yeah,
serviceable. He's been a starting back in the league for about 6 years with Houston. So,
Houston and with Buffalo.
oh
So
yeah,
Buffalo previous to Houston.
that's
But
true.
I think when you're looking at this Giants team, the key is to put them away early.
Yeah.
If the Giants start with the ball, get a stop and go score. Put a 2-score lead on them early and have them try to play catch up. Because if you're in that spot, you can run a more balanced offense throughout the entirety of this game. You can milk some clock with your running game because I do think there are holes to be had against this team.
Mm-hmm.
They can get after the passer because they've got Brian Burns and Thibodeau as rushers. Who Brian Burns has a lot of success in the league at getting after the quarterback, and Thibodeau has shown improvement from year one to year two last year to be able to be more force in that pass rush game. So being able, they profile as true rushers. They're not a stout in the run game. You could say the same thing about Derek Hall. Can't say the same thing about Boye Mafe and Cheney Wosu. They're pretty well-rounded players at those positions.
Mm-hmm.
So being able to attack this team early, get on the board, make them play comeback, make Daniel Jones beat you,
Yep.
or take away his early throwing lanes and make them run the ball. And this could be a good bounce back game for the run defense.
I agree. I agree. One change I want to see is when both Kenneth Walker and Charbonnet are healthy, I would like to see a little bit more sharp action in on that too. Yes, Kenneth Walker is the lifeblood, right? But that 1-2 punch combo, right? You I do want to give Kenneth Walker a little less workload just so that he doesn't get injured again. And you can still have that because you've seen how this league can run running backs into the ground, right? And stuff like that. But we spent a third round pick on Sharp, a second round pick. Sorry. And when Kenneth Walker's healthy, there's just really not a lot of run until late in the game, it seems like.
I was okay with this. There were some series that Kenneth Walker didn't touch field and it was Charbonneau, but they were in heavy pass situations, weren't running the ball as much. But when you look at this team as a whole, early on, it was heavy K9 in week one. Week two, I don't think Kenny McIntosh or Helani got any run on the field. Sharp was on that field every time they had a running back on the
Yep.
field. And then I think that McIntosh had about 4 or 5 plays on the field against the Dolphins. So lightening his workload a little bit this week, I wasn't opposed to, just because he's got a lot of wear and tear. He was on the field quite a bit the previous 2 weeks. I don't want to see it become a true 50-50 split, because I
No.
do think that difference is, I would like to see in the run game if we were getting closer to a 75-25% split, because I do think what Sharps brings you as a third down back, with his ability to catch the ball in the backfield and his ability to stonewall and stay there and keep the pocket clean for Geno, is a key aspect for this team going forward.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I just like Sharps, dude. I just like it. I just want to see him run the ball really well.
And when you look at this, you don't want to have this be a trap game either, because
Yep.
the week after that, you got the 49ers coming to town on an even shorter week, playing on Thursday, in division opponent, first division game of the year. So I want to see them go and take care of business and then be able to then get ramped up. I think the Seahawks win this game pretty comfortably as long as they play to their potential. And they are going to need to get healthier. You're going to need
Yes.
to see at least one of your defensive stalwarts be available. And those are the guys I'm including in that are you need two out of these five. You got Julian Love, Boye Mafe, Leonard Williams, Jenny Nwosu. Those guys, you got to have two. I think that was only four, but you got to have two of those guys
Byron
that are
Murphy.
healthy. I guess you could, no, I'm not going to put Byron Murphy. I probably
Okay.
should, but he's not. I can't call him a stalwart of this defense yet. I
Fair.
would say
Fair.
Jerome Baker, but I think what we've seen on Tyrese Knight, we feel pretty solid about.
Feel
So
pretty solid about.
out of those four guys, two of them need to be on the field, and I think they are. This team's a little different. They do have
Yep.
good depth, which was been put on display. You have Kobe Bryant that
I do want
I
Kobe
like.
Bryant back there. If Julian Love does not, I do not want Kayvon Wallace back there. I want Kobe Bryant back there. Dang it. Get Kayvon off the field. It's Kobe Bryant's time if Julian Love is hurt.
We could see that, and then most of you, I would think's got to be close. So
It has to be.
put them away early, take it home to the barn, and have a little fun with some hometown cooking.
Yep.
Well, that's gonna wrap it up for this episode. But before you put your phone down or your computer down, why don't you go give us a social media follow? You can find me, your boy, Coach Red, on X at the Real Coach Red, on Instagram at the Real underscore Coach Red, TikTok at the Real Coach Red. Also find the show over on YouTube. Search Kicking It with Coach Red. Like, subscribe, hit the bell notifications, leave a comment or two. Kane, where you at?
Find me around Twitter, K2406, TikTok, K0624. Also follow the show's socials over on Twitter and Instagram at Coach Red Pod. False. Do it, freaking do it.
And as always, stay fresh.
Stay fresh, peeps.
Peace.